It actually showed me that I can be more productive in less time when I'm focused, right? So if I didn't have as much time because my days were shorter, because I had to get a swim in the morning and a run in the afternoon, that time in the middle had to be used really, really well. And so it started shifting. I think prior to that, maybe peanut butter things across the day a little bit more, was not quite as focused and would let things be interrupted, so that really challenged me to think differently and operate differently in the business. I also got sharper in my mindset as it relates to dealing with discomfort. So part of doing Ironman is being able to sit in discomfort for long periods of time. Well, that's true in business too. So I can sit, part of the reason we have the success we do today is I can sit in discomfort for a really long time. And I can deal with it and still make good choices to get to an end result while being uncomfortable.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here today in the Propel Production Podcast Studio in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Mr. Cullen Talley. Cullen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are the CEO of Exit Momentum?
I am. We usually say founder and head coach just because that's the role that I play. But yes, CEO, all of those titles.
Yeah. And tell us what Exit Momentum does.
So we are a business coaching firm. We work with entrepreneurial leadership teams. So typically businesses somewhere between 5 and 100 million in revenue that are growing, that are having some of the challenges of growth. A lot of our owners wind up coming to us saying, hey, we've done great and I'm excited about what we're doing, but I feel like I'm getting outside of my own knowledge and we need a third party and I need some help building a team around me. There's a lot of passion for their team and those key folks in the organization. So we work with them.
So you're from Baton Rouge.
I am.
You grew up here.
I did.
And your business is spread out how far now?
So we're national just because my network was national with my background. And so it started national. We've been focusing locally because I have a passion for doing this here. I think there's a real need for it here. I think we're underserved here in Baton Rouge, particular in South Louisiana, in these skills. But just because of my personal network and then the coaches on the team, we are national. I
enjoyed doing the research on you, and it ran across a couple of podcasts and was watching them. And one of them, you're talking about your early childhood, and that it, wasn't necessarily. I think the podcaster was saying, I can tell you came from a great foundation. You kind of add a little color to that. Can you?
Yes, I would say, I came from young parents. So, my mom was 18 when she got married, 19 when she had me. My dad was in the service. We moved to Germany very quickly. So we joke that she was a kid raising a kid. So we were more partners than we were mom and child. And that kind of continued on. I was an only child till 9. And that really started part of my entrepreneurial journey, which we can cover as well, just because of some of the things that they were up to that it really interested me. But yeah, it was a little less directive, I would say. And by the time I was 13 or 14, I really was making all of my own decisions and managing life that way. So I would not say that it had the same structure, at least that I provide my children, and they were doing the best they could, but it certainly lacked that. So it was a lot of testing, trying, and certainly failure in the midst of that as a young man.
And you ended up with how many siblings?
I have 3 other siblings.
3 others.
Yeah, so I have a sister 9 years younger than me, a brother 10, and then another brother 17 years younger than me.
So once they figured things out, they kind of got the family thing going.
Yeah, I don't know if they figured. I'm not sure we ever really figured it out. They wound up divorced when they're separated when I was 16, divorced shortly thereafter, and stuff like that. So I'm not sure it ever got figured out together. Let's just put it that way. So
were there things that you saw in your young childhood where you're like, okay, I'm going to do this different?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so for me, it was clarity of direction and understanding kind of the why behind some things. So with my daughters, it's super important to me that they have some level of structure in life, and that they also understand why. Right. Yeah. So it's not just do it because I said so. It's like, this is what this leads to, and here's why we're doing it this way.
And so what was it that you saw your parents doing that was entrepreneurial based?
Yeah, so in the beginning, my mom was very, very passionate about a product called Shackley at the time, which was a health program, vitamins, lots of other health products, cleaning products, stuff like that. And at the time, nowadays you have it online and you drop ship it to somebody. Back then, you bought a lot of inventory. And so we had an entire office in our house that was full of literally hundreds of product, and we would get deliveries 1 to 2 times per week. And so this was almost like a little store in the house. And so people would come and buy their vitamins and their protein and their cleaning products. But, I started to understand what it meant for inventory to come in and cycling inventory from front to back and making it look right and making sure you could bag it appropriately and how you filled out sales receipts. And literally from the time I was 5 or 6 years old, I was fascinated by it. And I would go to conventions with my parents, and they would hear people speak, and I'd be the only kid in the room, and I'd wear a suit, and I'd help do product demonstrations at the home shows downtown in the Centroplex, and now I guess the River Center, Raising Cane's River Center. But it was in me from that time. They didn't have to ask. I loved it, and I loved watching it happen. I liked watching how adults responded, and it's been the passion and joy of my life, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You ended back in Baton Rouge.
I did. So, so my dad got out of the service when we were very, very young, and I was here sometime I was 3 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that all took place here.
Yeah.
And so the next thing I kind of think of in your journey is when you started working at Carriages, Clothiers, which did you have any entrepreneurial experiences prior to that, other than your?
So prior to that, was a swim coach, and so only thing about that entrepreneurial was I realized some skills were more valuable than others. So I had buddies of mine that were working at the grocery store doing other things, making, I don't remember the time, they probably were making $3 or $4 an hour, and I was making 10. So there was I started to understand that specialized skills might be more valuable in the world, right?
That's interesting.
So anyway.
So you started working at Carriages at some point, right?
I did during my senior year at Catholic High. So I had been a customer there, and Jeff DeQuano was amazing, just somebody that I looked up to and felt connected to and stuff. And at this point, because of some of the family things, right, I didn't have a lot of leadership from my dad as it relates to kind of stepping out in the world. I was starting to cobble together, kind of male role models to create what I felt was like the mentor and leadership. So I was kind of getting pieces of that put together. And Jeff was absolutely one of those folks, along with Dr. Richard Hill, his partner in Carriages. So I went to Carriages 7 times during my senior year, trying to get Jeff to hire me. And on the 7th time, he kept kind of saying, well, we're trying to figure some things out. On the 7th time, he just pulled out the schedule and put me on the schedule. And so my journey began, and I was there for 7 years. It was very formative for my life and for my career, and I am incredibly grateful for what they let me do. And it's pretty crazy to think about how much rope Dr. Hill and Jeff gave me.
Now, that's the little store on the corner of Old Hammond and Jefferson?
Yes, sir. Now, we were in a different spot then, but in that shopping center, because Dr. Hill owned the shopping center. And so at that time, we had just the boys or prep store. We had the women's store. It was not the men's store that it is today. We grew into that.
Yeah. And so what did you learn?
So I learned a lot of things I didn't know. I learned how to be a really bad boss, right? So I didn't know much about leading and managing fairly quickly within a few months. Like, I'm still in high school. The schedule got turned over to me. I got invited to go buying. So Jeff and I went down to New Orleans to go to the Kenneth Gordon facility down there to buy some, and I didn't know how to size things. He slid a piece of paper to me. I'd never looked at fabrics. How many mediums do you buy? How many larges do you buy? All these kind of things. So I just got thrown into the fire. And so I did a really poor job of managing the staff that was older than me, including, people that were related to him and all kind of good stuff. So I learned how to be a really bad boss. I learned how to manage inventory and those kind of things. But it was the beginning of putting some pieces together. So as that continued to follow along, I also started to learn about running the finances of a business. Meaning, okay, if we didn't turn inventory enough, what does that mean? If we mark things down, like I started to understand margin. So there were some amazing lessons in there about margin, about inventory turns, about cash flow, about traffic in the store, about how to manage costs as it relates to even labor. So it was just, even in the early days at 18, 19, 20 years old, and then I started traveling to market with them, New York, Dallas, Las Vegas. While I'm still in college, can't even rent a car. So when I go to Dallas, I'd have to take this, because only Alamo would rent to you under 25. So I'd have to take this bus all the way off DFW's site so I could get to the Polo showroom or the Tommy Hilfiger showroom and stuff like that. Because literally during my freshman and sophomore year, they started letting me go to, while I was at LSU, they started sending me to market by myself.
So you're at LSU and you're studying what?
Business. Yeah, and I always say that, I certainly enjoyed my time at LSU, but about 10, maybe 20% of my education came from LSU. 80-90% came from the application of the things I was learning at LSU in Carriages. So all my projects were all around Carriages. So marketing wasn't just a concept for me. We were doing marketing plans. Management wasn't just a concept for me anymore. These were actually things I was living versus just theory, right? Accounting, like it came to life for me because I was literally showing up at LSU in my khakis and my polo shirt. Everybody else is in their t-shirt and shorts and going hang out in the afternoon. I was leaving there going straight to work.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, the concept of making that a model, and
to me, the applied learning process, like I'm just so, again, thankful for that because it accelerated me. So, at 22, when I graduate, I'm opening a store. Me and a buddy actually started a little snowball business on the side. So we had a little deal that we did on that. And so it just allowed me to move so much faster than I think some of my peers who just didn't have that application at that point in time.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay, so how long, you graduated, you said, and you still worked. How long did you work at Carriages after graduation?
After LSU?
Yeah.
3 more years.
3 more years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We opened a store on Highland Road near LSU, right there by the South Gates, and that shopping center used to have calendars in it. So we opened a store there, and I did, and so we had that, and then we had expanded into the school uniform business with School Time. So what this cute little shop over in Bocage Village had really turned into something, and there was a lot happening, and so again there was more expansion opportunity for me in the midst of that.
Wow. Okay, so what caused you to step away from that?
Well, I had started to see that the store had to be open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., which means somebody had to unlock it at 9:30 and somebody had to close it at 6:30, and that happened 6 days a week. I also started to see that there was a limitation in earning, but just based on the business you're in. There's only so much margin, so I started to understand that. And I just started to feel the drive to do some other things. I had done 7 years at 25 years old is a long time, Right. So it was time for me to do something else. I wanted some more flexibility in what I was doing as far as life. I also wanted, some more challenges. And so I could just feel that itch. And throughout my career, there's this, when it's time to change, there's this internal, for me, it's really a conversation with God, but whatever people want to call it. But there's this internal knowing that it's time to make a move, and that is true of each one of the pivotal changes that I've made throughout my career.
So you started looking around, and
I did, and nobody would hire me because I had no outside sales experience, and I would get super frustrated, very immaturely aggravated about the fact that nobody would take me seriously, and I felt like I was a serious business person. And so I finally landed in the merchant services business. No salary, no benefits, no draw. You eat what you kill.
100% commission.
It was. And it nearly killed me.
But you did that for a while.
I did for quite a while. And that was very locally focused and a big part of some skills that I've developed over time, again, at a very young age.
And what were your responsibilities in that job?
In that job, it was meeting with small to medium-sized business owners, which foreshadowed where we are now in a huge way, and helping them understand the evolving landscape of payments. So at this point in time, you're talking mid to late 90s, the payments world was changing as it relates to integrated systems, specialized systems in grocery and gas stations and retail. And so there was a lot happening innovation-wise, gift cards, in that form, getting away from paper. There was checks, codes. There was a lot happening as it relates to the changes in that world.
And you did that for a good while.
So another 7-year stint. Now, I did the direct sales. So literally originally the model was go cold call basically these shopping centers, walk up and down, beat on doors, get people to talk to you, which teaches you a lot. I started asking the question, is there a better way to do this? And I kept running into these merchants, these business owners who would tell me, well, I deal with my local bank, but they don't really know what they're doing, but they're my bank. And so unlike B1 Bank, I'm sure they know exactly what they're doing. Some of these community banks were not, because I worked, all around the Baton Rouge area. And I wound up in Clinton, Louisiana, and I was at an automotive store next door to a branch of the bank. I literally left the automotive store. They were paying 6-7% on their rates. I walked over to Clinton Bank and Trust and walked in, introduced myself and said, here's what I do. Would you like some help? And she said, oh my gosh, please. And so then she got me in front of the president. I closed the deal. I called back to corporate. I was like, I need a contract. They're like, we don't have a contract. I was like, well, you better get one because I just signed the bank to this deal. And that opened up a world to me of referral opportunities. So instead of me beating up doors and beating myself up, I started signing more and more referral partners. And by the time I was done, I had 30 Louisiana banks under contract, representing well over 100 branches. And I really supported the banks. And that, again, twists into what I step into next after that.
And so the banks were going to help with help me walk.
It was a referral relationship. So at the time, the banks first off held the risk, which they were unqualified to do. They didn't know about payments. They knew about loans. They knew about deposits. They knew about all the great things that banks knew about. But the volume was rising, right? At one point in time, you got to think electronic payments was 10, 20% of my volume. Well, now it's 40, 50, 60. There's more risk to the bank, and they're in a situation where they're not qualified to do it, and there's innovation happening in and around them from the terminals that were literally sitting on the counters to the communication that happened with software and so forth. And so we were a referral partner, but we took the risk, and then I worked to the bank would call and say, hey, we just opened an account with Mr. Jones. Can you go talk to him about his feed store or his dry cleaners or whatever it may be? And so we were an extension of the bank at that point in time.
So the bank then becomes
just a referring party. I mean, they would send us leads and then they made revenue. They made a rev share off of the transactions that we handled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we took away the risk. We took away the service work. We brought the expertise. They made incomes, and oftentimes they were making more income without any risk because we assumed all the risk. And then they wound up with experts like me, and then I built a little army of me across the Southeast U.S.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And so what did that lead to next?
So it led to some conversations. So I had another great mentor at the time, Ed Labrie, who became chairman of First Data, which was a company that acquired the company I was with at the time, Concord EFS out of Memphis. And Ed was extremely successful, one of the most successful people that I had been around. Was publicly traded at the time. This is mid-90s. He's making $20 million a year, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But he was also a great coach and mentor of mine. And I remember having a conversation with him after I had a lot of success, and I was pretty full of myself, and as you tend to be maybe in your 20s. And I said, what can I do to be more valuable in my career into the company? He's like, well, you got to learn more about business. You're really good at sales, and you're really good at communicating what we do, but you don't understand the back end at all. And so if you're going to be somebody who can build value for yourself in business and help our clients and help this company, you're going to have to go further than just being a rock star salesperson.
Yeah, that's cool. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
What company was that?
So that was at the time Concord EFS, and which became First Data. So First Data acquired us, and that's actually one of the reasons I departed that organization.
And what did you do after that?
There was, again, this indication, this excitement that I started to feel again about the innovation that was happening in and around payments technologies. So during my time at Concord, and then when we got acquired by First Data had a lot of bureaucracy, which I despised. I remember calling Ed and saying, I got to leave. And he said, why? I said, well, we're 4 times the revenue, and we're 11 times the people. Do the math on that in the amount of bureaucracy was in there. So at that point, I got connected with some private investors who invested in new payments technology. So think not VC, not private equity. This is really like family offices, people writing their own checks. And so they were raising anywhere from $5 to $50 million to help fund ideas or entrepreneurs. So usually the angel round or the Series A round. And so I got connected to that group, created some relationships, and they started bringing me in, and I started taking equity in those deals as part of the sales team, and then more executive roles, and then it just started moving. So for the next kind of 15 years, I was in a number of companies connected back to these investors.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible to be part of small teams, so teams of 4 or 5 of us trying to figure it out, and then working through an exit where we were acquired by a much larger company and live inside the bureaucracy. So one of the most successful companies we were a part of, Firethorn, was the first mobile banking provider to the financial services industry. So we were doing apps on a phone before there was an iPhone. So we had a contract with Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and then we had to go contract with Chase and Citi and Region, all the banks, like working with a B1 or anybody like that, where we'd have to go get all, and then we'd have to figure out the technology because you couldn't get onto the phone except going through the carrier. So it was a very interesting time to deal with the dynamics. You were limited on how much space you could use on the phone technologically, and you had to go sell something to people that had never been done before. And that's the part that I loved. I loved communicating that message to boards and to executives about here is where the industry is going. Here is where the consumer experience is going. And you might be dealing with somebody a little bit older, maybe our age and a little bit older at that point in time, somebody who lives in a certain financial level of success that may not understand why somebody needs to check their balance, regularly or pay bills through their phone and stuff like that. So there was a part of changing their worldview that really excited me. And so that company, 2 years in 2007, exited to Qualcomm for $220 million based on the technology and the relationships.
Now, the family offices you're working with, they were spread out.
It was one primary, so a gentleman by the name of Cam Lanier that lives in West Point, Georgia, who's got a long history in telecom and stuff like that, was the primary kind of person, and then he had quite an orbit around him in Georgia, and then all the way out to California as well.
So he could bring in.
He always could bring in capital, and people had trusted his track record was phenomenal and still is.
So you worked with them in a number of different companies.
Correct.
Is that
Three firms, 3 or 4, maybe 4. Yes, over about that 15-year period. Each time, we would move to an operational status where it's operating. It was time for me to step onto the new deal. Or there was other times, like in the Firethorn example, I had equity, I had to ride through my earnout. It didn't make sense financially just because of how well the company had done and the transfer of the equity over. So then I stayed in with Qualcomm, which again was a great lesson. Here's a company that's running up to a $100 billion market cap with tens of thousands of employees all over the world. So I got this dichotomy of there were 20 of us trying to conquer the world, and then eventually we're inside the behemoth that has conquered the world, and just seeing the similarities and the differences was just fantastic as far as understanding the fundamentals of business.
Wow. We would like to thank Castro Real Estate Services for sponsoring the Next Entrepreneur podcast. Castro Real Estate Services is a full-service real estate brokerage firm based in Baton Rouge. They can handle commercial and residential transactions in Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas. Need to buy or sell real estate? Call the company that cares about you. Castro Real Estate. Turnkey Solutions is a nationwide cybersecurity and IT systems expert, providing the services that growing businesses need to stay ahead of hackers, hurricanes, and IT nightmares. With 24/7 support teams and offices across Louisiana and Texas, they bring peace of mind to companies of all sizes. Their 5-star rated team provides lightning-fast IT support with the cybersecurity and business continuity solutions today's businesses demand. When you're looking for a technology partner to provide you with peace of mind, find out more by calling them at 225-224-6594 or chat with them online at www.tks.la/NXT. We would like to thank MBD Automation for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. MBD Automation is a mechanical install contractor with a program-centric focus. So what do these guys do? They install conveyor systems, VRCs, platforms, singulators, sorters, and all sorts of other types of automated equipment. Who do they work for? They work for systems integrators, manufacturers, and end users in fulfillment centers, airports, mail processing facilities, and projects in the defense industry. MBD Automation works for numerous Fortune 500 companies across the United States and has a list of international clients that they perform work for in the U.S. as well. If MBD Automation can help you on your next project, you can find them online at mbdautomation.com. So I was watching a podcast you're on. It was from several years ago, and it dealt with you being a stepdad.
Yep.
And so I think timeline-wise, it's we're kind of in order here.
Yep.
But it was really insightful, in that I just didn't know anything about you previously, and yet it brought in so much color to your story to me,
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy.
No.
It didn't sound like.
No.
Which, and so why don't we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. So, amidst the chaos of trying to figure out who I was going to be as an entrepreneur and businessman and wanting to have success and driving toward that, and again, reaching back, I don't have a lot of guidance. I'm piecing together, men and women who had some level of success, and a lot more men, just because the situation with my dad, which was he wasn't a bad guy, he just didn't have any guidance here, right? And so we're in that, and then meet an amazing girl, have no intentions of being with somebody who has kids, and she does, and again, one of those kind of God strikes that happens, and we meet, hang out for a little bit, and then we kind of go our separate ways, and we run back into each other one night in July of 2000, and I said, "You want to go to dinner?" So we did, and kind of the rest of the history. We've been together since that time. But all of a sudden, in making that choice to be committed to her, to Lauren, my wife, I've got 2 stepkids, and complicated situation with their dad, and so a lot of angst there. But I just knew that if I was going to be in, I needed to be fully in at that point and operate in that way. So learned a lot, and it definfinely had some challenges.
Now, how old were the girls at that time?
5 and 7. So Marky was 5, Sammy was 7. And so they were young, it was early days. So this was not going to be a quick, they weren't like teenagers, hey, we got a couple of years and you're out. It was, we're in. And,
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
How was it? How was that initial, their initial reception of you?
Yeah, so Sammy, the oldest, was much more guarded. She was, I think, trying to deal with at 7 years old and 8 years old, 9 years old, how to be loyal to her parents, right? Loved her mom, loved her dad, and trying to figure that piece of it out. Who was I? So she was more guarded. Marky's more free spirit. Marky's like, hey, extra people who get to do stuff with me. So it was a very different experience, and I appreciate both very much. And we have amazing relationships now, fortunately, all these years later. Which I tell people, you don't know. I tell people all the time, there's no guarantee, right? There's no guarantee, but you have a responsibility to those children because they didn't get a choice, right? They got me. They didn't get to choose that. They got inserted into their life. So it was my job to do my part for them because they didn't get the choice. They didn't get a vote, right? But it was early on. The reception was, like I said, much more guarded by Sammy. I think once when we had Riley Reed, our youngest daughter, and Sammy saw me as a father, and then she was connected to her sister, who was connected to me. It started to shift some things, right? And so,
and how old would she have been at that time?
So 2 years later, so okay. 9, so 7 and 9 at that point in time.
Oh, that's cool.
It is cool, and it definitely impacted us as a family. It just caused us to grow together. I think also maybe I settled down a little bit. I was a little tough and a little rigid in the beginning for a number of different reasons. Kind of how I grew up. Had some concerns about some of the lack of structure and maybe some of the world they had been a part of and stuff outside of us. And so, I was starting to mellow maybe a little bit.
That's cool. And the third child is a girl or a boy?
Yeah, girl.
So 3 girls.
3 girls. And now we have a new puppy that's a girl. And we just had a granddaughter 2 weeks ago. So I am surrounded, but I am loud enough, mean enough, and capable enough to handle all these wonderful women. And
so you had started doing triathlons around this time.
Yeah, I started picking it up. So when actually we were pregnant for Riley Reed, I did the Louisiana Tri at Falls River. and just kind of got into that. And then some buddies of mine kept going, and they wound up 2 years later in 2005 doing a half Ironman, and I went down to watch them. Another pivotal moment for me. I'm sitting on a wall in Panama City, Florida in May watching some people do a race, and I'm having some conversation in my head about this person doesn't really look that fast, and this person doesn't look like they're in the best shape and stuff like that. And I just had this moment of clarity. I'm sitting there drinking a beer watching them, having some thoughts in my head, maybe a little bit of judgment. I'm like, you know what, dude, they're in the race and you're sitting outside. So maybe you ought to hold it. Maybe you ought to think about what you're going to do, because you've been talking about this for a long time. I was a distance swimmer in grade school, high school, and all that kind of stuff. I was a distance runner, ran for Pete Boudreau at Catholic High. So I had the endurance background, and I always said I wanted to do a triathlon because one of my coaches in swimming had been an Ironman, and I was fascinated by the race. And here I was sitting there out of shape, overweight, having some judgments about some people, and just had an awakening moment about you're kind of you're having some thoughts that maybe you need to take a look at yourself a little closer.
Yeah. And so how long, after that point did you start to?
Oh, I registered within a week or two. Really? For my first full Ironman.
Which was how far off at that point?
It was about a year off.
Okay.
Yeah, so plenty of time to get going and get registered and all that kind of stuff. And it started a 12-year journey that was absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
So in that 12 years, you've done
15 Ironman races between halves and fulls, and probably another, I don't even know, 40 or 50 short races and stuff. Yeah, worked with Will Jones here in town, who has Fourth Dimension Fitness, an amazing coach. We did a lot of things mindset-wise and body-wise that were incredible for that I'm super proud of, but it also had a major impact on my business success and my business mindset and the way that I coach today.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's circle that back to business, where you're at in your career at that point, and how that impacted your business.
Well, so you can imagine training for Ironman is significant amount of time, right? So it's eating. There's only so much time in the day, and you're trying to be a present husband and father. You're trying to do right by your employer, because I worked for people at that point in time. I wasn't independent on my own at the time, and you got to train. And training's 15 to 20 hours a week. Plus, you got to get a massage therapist, you got to get the chiropractor, there's driving, you got to nutrition. There's a lot to managing that level of load, and so it helped me start to figure out how to prioritize my time better. It actually showed me that I can be more productive in less time when I'm focused. Right, so if I didn't have as much time because my days were shorter, because I had to get a swim in the morning and run in the afternoon, that time in the middle had to be used really, really well. And so it started shifting. I think prior to that, maybe peanut buttered things across the day a little bit more, was not quite as focused, and would let things be interrupted, so that really challenged me to think differently and operate differently in the business. I also got sharper in my mindset as it relates to dealing with discomfort. So part of doing Ironman is being able to sit in discomfort for long periods of time. Well, that's true in business too. So I can sit, part of the reason we have the success we do today is I can sit in discomfort for a really long time. And I can deal with it and still make good choices to get to an end result while being uncomfortable.
Wow, that's fascinating. I'm thinking back during the recession when times were tough. And I'm talking about 10.
Yeah.
A recession that started in 8, but really kind of hit me more in 10 to 14.
Sure.
And there were times where it was really rough.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I didn't really think of it in the way of being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what it was.
Right.
So having that training to sit in that discomfort for a while and then, carry on is really fascinating. You did several things. You had a period of where you were, working at jobs for like 7-year stints.
Yep.
And then you took a few jobs that were shorter and
some of the shorter ones were tied to that group of investors. They were common investors across those that happened. And then you're right, at the end there was a couple of them where it was like just trying to find the right spot for me.
The Edo Interactive.
Yep.
Was that with that investor group?
So some common leadership members who have been part, so not that investment group, but some common leadership. Another friend and mentor of mine, Keith Smith, who was a big part of helping. I worked for him in the payments business. He came into the company I was with. Actually, great story there about not wanting to have a boss, thinking I was qualified to take the job when I wasn't, and learning a few things once I got to work for him. And again, maybe taking away some of that hubris of a younger age. But in any event, Keith and I had moved through a number of those companies because he was tied to this investment group, and then he got recruited in to go help turn a company around that was have some challenges in executing for sure. And he asked me to come in and revamp the entire sales structure of the business.
And so how did that work?
So it was tough. I got there, and the business was really overcapitalized, some very unhappy investors as it relates to how to deal with it. The market had not taken off as fast, and so the take rate because it was transaction-based, meaning that we got paid when transactions occurred. So in this business, we took your spend on your card, your credit or debit card. We had inventory from retailers, restaurants, services business, and said, hey, if you bought at PetSmart, would another pet store we wanted to pull an offer to try to pull that spend away. If I'm spending money at Marriott, that suggests that Hilton would be interested in trying. So there was just an opportunity to go market to them, like if you see what they call card-based offers on your credit card. So this was the beginning of that, of being able to match your purchases one by one across millions of cards, across millions of offers. So sounds simple now. It was very complex then. But it was taking a while to get that done and dealing with all the data that has to transfer. So they had a very big sales team because they had a big aspiration. So they were really over-engineered as far as people. And so I had to come in, cut it. We cut over 50% of the cost out, but I had to grow the business 20%. So I'm taking the sales team and chopping it in half, and actually smaller than that because we had some other expense in there, and still to grow the business, and we successfully did it. So it was really hard. It was not a lot of fun conversations. It meant I had to kind of roll up my sleeves, and instead of kind of this fancier SVP of sales role, I had to get my hands back in some of the deals and deal with clients because I just knew how to move people through a decision process faster, which was fine. I'm not above that, but it was a tough game, and I was there for a period of time to help them get that done, and just could see it was going to be, they were going to figure out somebody to exit to. It was not going to be meaningful for me from an equity standpoint. And so it was time to do something else.
So how long had you been had an equity position in these companies you'd been working with?
Well, I started with that back at Concord EFS and First Data, so that's in my late 20s, and that was one of the things that Ed taught me. I was like, I started understanding at the time. When I left Carriages, I had no idea that the way you built wealth was not from income; it was from ownership, right? And so while I wasn't going to start my own thing and own the whole thing, I started to understand, and in talking to people, I was like, oh, okay, wealth is built based on ownership, so I can have a small piece of a large thing, and that can grow over time, and I can negotiate for that up front when I join an organization. And when I provide more value, which is one of the things we teach, if I provide more value, then I can ask for more respectfully, not like I'm writing a $2 million check, or if I like an investor would in that sense, and we do that now. But regardless, as far as making investments and stuff. But bottom line is, at the time, I started taking equity positions in each one of the deals. It was really a requirement for me, in addition to cash compensation. So
in those deals, are you having to? Is that part of the original offer? We're going to give you some equity, or were you actually buying into equity?
No. At the time, no. It was part of the original offer, right? Okay. So for me to join, part of my compensation was equity, and it was as I started to understand how to do that, then I was asking respectfully, but really requiring that for me to join.
I see.
Yeah.
Wonder Technologies.
Yeah. So again, common investor, Keith, again, connected back. He's got an opportunity there. Once we helped Ito get to a place where it could transition over to another owner. Wonder was a very early stage opportunity. Still connecting the CarLink offer space, a little bit different. That's now called Payouts Network. Actually, interesting enough, circles back. We coached them last year doing what we do today.
No kidding.
Yeah, so super cool to have been part of a very, very small team that founded it, trying to figure out where the market was. And, was there for a period of time, but it just wasn't moving fast enough for me. At this point, I had recognized my value. I had seen what I'd been able to do. I had enough kind of skins on the wall, enough results that I was like, this is going to take too long, and there's not enough upside here. And love the people, want to be respectful, want to set them up, but it was time for me to go do something bigger.
So at what point, I mean, this is in a time where there's a lot of startup, opportunities. At what point are you becoming a little more sensitive to, is it too early or is it too late?
The Edo Interactive thing, I learned a lot there because I didn't do enough diligence up front on my part. I trusted, and listen, nobody took advantage of me. Sure. I was compensated. So I wasn't as aware of what could happen with the overcapitalization of the company and the impact that would have and the stress between us as the executive team and the board and the investors. And I just saw that at a different level. And so that year-ish that I was there, it just opened my eyes further because we'd had a lot of success before that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when we exited Firethorn, our original investors got 11 times their money in 20 months, right? I mean, so we had some big opportunities go really, huge. Really well. And so this was a time where I saw the inverse of that. And again, I was getting clear about who I was as a person, again, had the success, life is good with my family, and so it's like, okay, but I'm in this window that I'm starting to understand, hey, you're not this 20-something-year-old kid anymore who's kind of ahead of the game. It's not about comparing, people were catching up, but it was like, I could feel the clock starting to speed up on me, and so I was recognizing my value, and I was also seeing, listen, this doesn't go for forever. Like, you're going to have to start making some moves. And so I start looking for those things to have me accelerate into the next version of who I wanted to become.
And so was Wonder, were you in there premature?
So my skill set was over-engineered for where they were, and the business model wasn't as clear and wasn't as proven at this point in time.
Yeah.
But there were really solid investors and a really solid operator in there in Keith, along with some other folks that I knew very well from an investment standpoint. So I really trusted their instinct. And this is, again, where I start to say, okay, what am I hearing from inside me? And where's my barometer at versus always looking outside, right? Because you got to remember, going back to 18 years old and Jeff and Dr. Hill and all that kind of stuff and some of the chaos of my childhood, I was having to cobble that together. So if you told me, I would take that for more value than myself. At this point, the tide's starting to shift, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, Cullen, what do you think? What do you know? You connect into the things that you know cognitively, and this connection to self and heart and soul and God and everything else that allows you to make decisions.
Right. And so you moved on to Syniverse.
Correct. So I got recruited into Syniverse from, which was a larger company, again, tying back to somebody who had been with one of the card companies I was at. He had taken over COO. He's like, dude, I need somebody here. We're trying to step into the merchant world, so the retail world. We know telecom. We do not know that world. We need contacts. We need know-how. We need you to come help us do that business. And so he recruited me in. It was a way out. They also made a really attractive offer for me to join. And there was, again, another equity opportunity. But I got there, and it was a mess.
It was?
Yeah, just a mess. Just they had this constant turnover of the executive team. It happened again while I was there. Their strategy wasn't defined. They weren't well positioned for it. That would have. There's no way I could have known that till I got there and went to work trying to do it. They certainly had capital. They had people. People meant well, but they were not positioned to do this, and they were just searching for the next thing for themselves. When really they were a SMS text message provider. I mean, that's really what they were. And they were trying to figure out how to differentiate them and diversify. But it was going to take more time, and it was going to take more stability than was there. And I was just incredible. I've got some journaling that I have this journaling app that I use, and I see these journals that come up from that time period. And it was incredibly difficult and frustrating.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. So you got on the cell phone technology platform early on. And just kind of wrote it out and through so many different iterations. It
was really the intersection of fintech, which was the industry, and so financial services tied to mobile, tied to retail services. So it was this coming together of finance, technology, mobile, and how a consumer spends. And I just loved and was fascinated by what was happening. And it was changing so much because we're riding the mobile wave, we're riding the fintech wave. There was a lot happening in and around that, a lot of valuation being driven, right? Because we're talking about millions and millions of transactions.
Yeah.
And so it was an incredible time to be part of that.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Pivotal is pleased to sponsor the Next Entrepreneur podcast. Pivotal is a commercial building contractor that performs new building construction, building maintenance, tenant improvements, renovations, and additions. Pivotal has been in business for over 25 years. The Pivotal team is simply the best. They have an impeccable safety record and they crush schedules. A focus on quality and professional communication is at the root of their success. Pivotal also performs programs for clients who build in multiple markets with current projects in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. If you are looking for the perfect addition to your project team, a contractor who can deliver the results you need to succeed, Pivotal is the one. When it's critical, call Pivotal. They can be found online at pivotalperforms.com. This podcast is sponsored by Mayhall, Fondren Blaze, a Louisiana business litigation firm, offering sophisticated legal advice that is tailored to meet the needs of their individual clients, including a wide variety of litigation, complex business negotiations, corporate formations, closings, and title examination. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the expertise of MFB, a Louisiana practice made for business. Learn how we can work with you at www.mfbfirm.com. Okay, so you get a call from Wake Up Warrior.
I do.
And what is Wake Up Warrior, and how did that go down?
Yeah, so Wake Up Warrior is a coaching and consulting business. They focus on male entrepreneurs and the chaos of trying to manage all that. So there's a focus across 4 key areas, try to simplify it as much as possible. Body, obviously our physical body, being, our spiritual connection, whatever that means, balance, your family, your relationships, and then business, right? And recognizing that married entrepreneurs with children, there's a little bit of chaos in that world. And so it's a very clear focus on those folks. And I had been a client of theirs and going to an event called Warrior Week, which is kind of a combination of a beatdown, a retreat, and a business forum all in 5 chaotic, amazing days. I wound up connecting with that group, very, very small group, very, very focused on how we were going to manage those things. Because I was trying to manage, I got the Ironman thing going, right? I've got my family and the love for my children and my wife, and I'm trying to grow this business thing. And at the same time, I'm trying to be, a good person and connected to purpose. And it felt like a lot of plates spinning, and I didn't necessarily feel like I did a great job all the time. And so this gave me a container, and it gave me an association. So I've been a client for a couple of years. Garrett saw my skills, and so he called once he knew I was considering doing some other things. Said, "Man, I really could use your help." He's an incredible creative entrepreneur. So is his wife in another industry, and they needed some help. So they recruited me in. We moved to Orange County, California, to San Clemente, and we went to work on their business.
And that was you and your wife and
my youngest daughter, Riley Reed, correct.
And your youngest. And so tell us about that experience once you got there.
So I tell people it's kind of like if you had bought a new home and you walked into that house and you brought all your clothes and you walked into the closet. There were no bars to hang anything on. There was no shelves. There was just some sheetrock. And so when I got there, they were incredible, creative, producing entrepreneurs, but they were terrible with process and structure. But I mean, this is a $10 million operation. When I get this, this is not small, right?
Right.
And so we go to work, and this is when I get introduced to the idea of a business operating system. And this is the foreshadowing of what happens with me founding the company, because at this point I'm there and I'm trying to put all these businesses together. We've got a team of 50, 60 people. Danielle's in the beauty space. Garrett's in the coaching, consulting, publishing, software space. So I'm managing all their businesses, not just the warrior ones. And there's a lot of complexity, and it was eating me up. And some of the things I had worked on for the previous years, getting myself in a good spot across those domains, was starting to deteriorate. Right. So now I'm inside the machine that's eating me. That drives these things, but it's eating me up in the process. So somebody hands me this book called Traction, written by Gino Wickman, and I started to understand what a business operating system was. And I was like, listen, I don't have time to read another book. We're already rolling from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. 5-6 days a week. It's nonstop because of how Garrett creates. So can somebody help us? And so I wound up hiring a coach to come in, and we went to work on this system, and I put the system in place, and was just amazed at what we were able to do inside the business in 1 year.
And so that led to other opportunities, right? I mean, weren't you presented with like, hey, Cullen, can we talk about doing some more stuff here?
Yes.
But you had an inside struggle going on with you right then.
I did.
Right?
Yeah, we kept our home here. We had built a home here in town that we absolutely loved on Bayou Manchac. That's just really a special place for us. Two older daughters were here, and even though they were in college, we missed them quite a bit. And I just kept having this voice, this urging, this connection, and kind of meditation and prayer and stuff like that too. And I kept hearing this idea: are you going to build it for someone else again? And I'm super grateful, again, so grateful for all the people that I got a chance to do work with and be a part of their teams and learn so much. But it was time. And I was having this awareness that it was time to, now I had done enough work, I had enough experience that it was time for me to go build my own thing. And so as Garrett and I got to that point and there was a transition, we just both got clear. I had done what he needed to have done to help him transition, for him and Danielle, both of their businesses. They were in a much better spot than when I got there. And we, again, doubled the business, incredible changes in profitability, actually shut down 3 profitable divisions to focus on 4. I mean, it was some incredible moves in a 1-year period. But then it was time for me to go build my own thing. But I wasn't 100% sure what that thing was.
Really?
Yes.
So what steps did you take to get that clarity?
So I got some distance and some space, right? So I stepped out of Warrior. And so the key thing for me, we're still in Southern California. So walks on the beach, journal, listening to things. I started consuming content. There was a course from Sam Evans with consulting.com. So I knew it was consulting and coaching because Lauren, my wife, always said, she's like, everybody calls you for all kinds of things. You're constantly helping people and putting them in the direction, helping to figure out a plan. It's like you don't have to think about it. And as soon as they ask, your brain starts to go into that, why don't you do this and get paid for that? I'm like, I don't know nobody's going to pay for that. I don't know. It's just what I do. I'm just trying to help people. She's like, she has this intuition, which I listen to much better now than I used to, for sure. So I just started formulating that. I had been exposed to this idea of the business operating system with a program called EOS at the time, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so I went and got certified in that, and I went and got certified in exit planning because I really loved the way our investors thought about the opportunities to grow value over time. They weren't always going to exit. Sometimes they were going to operationalize the company and let it do what it does. But their mindset from the very beginning, from idea, was how do we structure and how do we think about value and manage that moving forward? So those two things together really were things that were naturally something that I gravitated toward.
Wow, that's fascinating. And so either through Lauren or it sounds like that was instrumental, but you came to coaching.
I did.
And then how did you come up with Exit Momentum?
So, the way that I think about it is, one, I like the idea of people that were thinking about exit. So a number of our clients have been raising capital. Some of them have been preparing for succession and family. Some of them do want to actually exit. But the other thing that's true is, when we think about Exit Momentum, I think about it like I remember, as a kid, I loved the space shuttle, right? I loved watching it take off. It was magic to me to watch it do that. But you watch it and it needs enough propulsion to get off the ground. And then it needs enough propulsion to make it through the atmosphere to get into space. And I always think about entrepreneurs who kind of get stuck at a certain level. Right. 2 million, 20 million, 20 people, 2 products, whatever the thing is that they're stuck at. They need enough momentum to break through. They've got to have enough lift to get through. So even if somebody wasn't planning on exiting and selling, even if somebody wasn't planning on raising capital or whatever else, they still want to get to that next level and not kind of get stuck. And so when we talk about exit momentum, it can be those financial things, but it can also just be the velocity of the organization moving into the next version of itself.
Yeah, that is fascinating. It's fascinating. That really is cool.
Thanks, man.
So we have Steve Mella, who's a former guest, who's working with us now. So we're going to talk to you about coming in next.
Great.
So, okay, so you decide on a name. You decide, and did you start in California? Did you come back here?
So I shot a video standing in my living room, my home in California, announcing my launch in May of 2019. Fortunately, one of the folks that I had been in Warrior with, a gentleman by the name of Chris Brings in South Carolina, in March, had told me, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, we're in. So I kind of had a customer before I had a product. And so Chris and Amy, I'm, again, incredibly grateful to have had. Literally, once I had formulated the thing, then I went through the formal process of here's what we're going to do. And they became the first client. So in June, so literally I announced in May, I'm getting my things together. We're moving home when Riley Reid gets finished school in early June. And then within a week or two, I'm up in South Carolina doing my first full session day with them as a leadership team and off and running.
Yep. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so how has your trajectory been since then?
It's been incredible. Listen, there's a lot of things. We've serviced over 60 people across the country at this 60 different companies. We've had people have incredible results in terms of what they've been able to do and managing. Obviously, we dealt with COVID, right? So we dealt with COVID. We've dealt with global supply chain. We've dealt with labor shortages. Now we're dealing with this. So we have had significant impact to our clients as it relates to things they had to face, and it is the most rewarding work I have ever done, to sit in the room and watch owners and leaders go to work to try to take care of their teams, take care of their communities. It's all, everybody who sees the name of my company thinks, these owners, they're trying to make money. Yes, we want to make money. We want to be profitable. We want to be good stewards of that. But the bottom line is they are so interested in how they continue to grow and impact their people and their teams and everything else. So getting to do that has been incredible. And so the role that I get to play and the other coaches on my team get to play of sitting there as a trusted third-party advisor, man, it is so fulfilling. Now, it's exhausting. I mean, there's times where, because of the work that we do, and that's why I've got to manage myself well, especially when I'm traveling in between sessions and stuff. It is incredibly rewarding work, but it requires a certain level of intensity and awareness, because you can grind yourself down doing it as well. But it's been, like I said, fantastic. We've got lots of accolades. We've got almost 70 videos on the website of people talking about the results. I tell people when we have prospects come, like, listen, don't listen to me. I'm pretty good at communicating a message. Go listen to 70 other people who've talked about us. Go find somebody that's like you, that you think you might connect with, and go watch their video and see what they say.
So you have testimonials?
We do.
From your previous clients?
We do, and a lot of them are active now. I mean, we have clients that have been with us since the very beginning. So we don't try to force people to stay. They're not contractually obligated to stay, but a number of my clients refer to us as the insurance policy not to F it up. So they come in and they want to stay coaching, and they appreciate what I hear back. I'm like, help me understand what it is that you're getting now, because I'm so curious about why. I know why they started. I know why they kept going to the beginning. But people that are 3 and 4 years in, why is it that they're continuing to stay? And they're like, listen, there's an accountability with you in the room that I can't have otherwise. You have perspective in that you're not financially tied to us. You're emotionally tied to us, but not to the same degree. And so you can punch through things faster. You can call us on our BS. You can remind us the things we said before that we haven't done, or remind us of things we have done when we're not owning our successes. So there's just this continued feedback and this kind of mirroring that we get to do with our clients. It's really, really pretty special. Okay,
so when someone agrees to employ you, hire your company, what do you need before you go in? I mean, you're not just going in there on day one, right?
So interestingly enough, I don't need anything.
Really?
I don't. Now, we gather information. We meet. So let me say this. We have a very particular process that we run people through, including having the team opt in, not just the owner. Because one of the things that we see is if the owner says, hey, we're doing this thing, everybody's like, okay, and I spend the first part of the first day helping them understand why we're doing it. If we do what we call our fit meeting, it's a bi-directional fit meeting. Are you a fit for us, and vice versa? When the team decides, I just had a financial institution in New Orleans last week make a decision. 8 people get in the room, get clear. This is what we're going to do, and they decided we are in. So it frees up the owner to not have to own that thing, and now they're opted into the work because it's rewarding, but it's also work.
Right.
So yeah, we go through that process. So I like to know some things, but the truth is I could know zero about your business, and I could walk in day one, because the dynamic of people and the dynamic of business, regardless of industry, we laugh all the time because all of our prospects say, well, we're a little different. We're a little different. We're a little different. And the truth is they're not. They're great people who care about their people, especially if they're coming to us. Yeah. And we get off and rolling, but I don't have to know a lot. I like to, just because I'm a higher fact finder,
right.
But it's not really necessary. The process works itself out.
So how do you build a team?
Well, we're building it, right? So how do I build?
How do you build coaches underneath you?
Yeah, so I've been very careful about that, because I have opinion, a strong one, about people that are in this space in business coaching consulting that have no business doing it. I think they're dangerous for businesses because they don't have real experience in implementing the system that they're now bringing to other businesses. Part of the reason I can do this and the other folks on my team can do this is we've done it in a business. I was at Wake Up Warrior implementing this thing. I sat at the table wondering, is this going to work? I made the changes. I changed how our weekly meetings went. I learned how to do quarterly coaching conversations. I did that before I came out and said to you, hey, let me show you how to do this thing that I've never done.
Right.
I don't speak from theory, and we don't as well. So as far as that goes, we're building slowly because I don't want, I'm unwilling to have people who think this is a good idea and a way to make money be on our team.
Yeah. Well, I take it back to Carriages. I mean, and how you went to school and did Carriages at the same time and took your marketing classes and your finance classes and made them all part of your program. And then through every step of your career, all the way it's a very insightful career. I mean, it's very impactful in what you've done, you know. So just in wrapping up here, I'm thinking about Marky, your daughter, right? And she's with you now.
She is. She's our director of operations and runs the entire back end of the business.
And so I'm thinking about that question, you know, that we talked about being stepdad. And how does that work for you? I mean,
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm just thinking, you know, as the conversation of stepdad, we talked. She was 9 when you start, or 7.
7 we got married. 5 when we met. 7 when we got married. Yeah.
And how old is she now?
27.
27. So
and a mother as of 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Thank you.
First time grandfather?
Yes.
Yeah, I have 5, so
it's been awesome.
Yeah, we had a great weekend, and so you've got a lot to look forward to there. But I'm just thinking of your business and the stepdad thing. So tell me what you think about that.
I think it's a critical topic and one people don't talk about enough. And I think it's one we're uniquely qualified to help with. And of course, many of our clients have family in their business, husbands, wives, children, grandchildren, cousins. Like there's just a lot of that in small to medium-sized businesses across this country. So we worked really, really hard. I made Marky interview for the job. She didn't just get to come on board because she was my daughter. She got paid peanuts to do work for a period of time and prove to me that she could handle the job. She got another promotion. She had to apply for and tell me why she deserved a promotion. And then she started using my own. I got out ninja'd by some things she had learned, which was a pretty funny story as well on one of her promotions. But she's worked her tail off to get there. The other thing that we are super, super conscious of, and I think this is so critical, we do all business communication via our business email addresses and through a particular app we use called Voxer. It's a voice app. Personal communication is on text and on our other email. So literally 2 years ago, while she's working for me, we're planning her wedding. There are times where I'm getting on a voice note. What's going on with this? Da, 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 da. My tone is different. I'm not like being dad. All that kind of, I'm in production mode. That is a mindset that I get into. And literally I could change that and be like, hey babe, how's the flowers going? So like literally we know and we change. But I think the key thing is in the channel, she knows this is her boss communicating versus her stepdad communicating to her. And so we're very, very conscious of that. And we've even identified each other, like when we'll talk live, hey, this is your boss calling. And so I think that has been so critical to us that we protect the relationship. And even in dealing with the maternity leave, right? We're in the midst of maternity leave. We're not a huge organization. So having the director of operations leave has some things fall back on me. And now my youngest is an intern while she's home from Clemson for the summer and doing some of that work for us. But bottom line is it's been an important thing to talk about and not accidentally occur. And so it's been the highest priority for us to protect the relationship above all things.
Yeah. Cullen, it has been fascinating to talk to you and continued success in all that you do. And we're going to be calling you.
Great.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks, sir. So good to talk with Cullen. He's such high energy. I really love doing the research on him, learning about his family life, about his triathlons and all of his work career. And if you look at what he's doing today, and how it relates back to all of his jobs that he's had throughout his career. Really fascinating story. We appreciate him coming in. We appreciate you guys watching. and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.